So Basic Instinct is a film that I've been meaning to watch for years just because it is very iconic and very influential and people talk about it a lot. But I just always seem to like put it to the back burner and never get to it. However, I've been watching some of the Netflix true crime documentaries, which I think are pretty good. Generally speaking, I think Netflix documentaries are a lot better than its original series or original movies. And I was watching Don't Fuck with Cats, which was about Luca Mignata, or however you pronounce his name, who was a killer slash animal abuser. And his favorite movie, as far as I could determine, was Basic Instinct. It was featured a lot in in the documentary series where I think he had a poster of it. He copied a lot of his mannerisms and his criminal activity based on the movie Basic Instinct. So I just like, you know what? It's as good a reason as any. Why don't I just sit down and watch the film? It's been on my watch list for years, and so I sat down and watched it. Overall, I'd say it's a pretty good movie. I have some major issues with it. We'll go through those as we go through this. Just kind of a general warning. I'd probably recommend it, but being conscious of who my audience is. If you're someone who doesn't like or tries to avoid watching things that has a lot of nudity and sex in it, then I would probably skip this movie just because that's a big focus of it. It's kind of, I think it's supposed to be on the line between an erotic film and just a film that has a lot of sex in it. I'd say it doesn't take up enough of the movie to be an erotic film, but that's just my view of the situation. So you have been warned. Now, our film takes place in San Francisco, and our main character is homicide detective Nick Curran, played by Michael Douglas. And I'll probably alternate between calling him Nick and calling him Michael Douglas, as I want to do during these movies. So, Nick is a cop with severe personal problems. A couple years back, I forget if it was a year or a couple years back, he shot a couple of tourists while undercover and high on cocaine. He's also an alcoholic and a sex addict who was part of Alcoholics Anonymous, but the case during the movie makes him break down and start drinking again. So he's very much an anti-hero. I think in some ways bordering on, I don't know if a villain protagonist is in it, but he's kind of like our nominal hero throughout the movie. So the film starts off with a really explicit sex scene in which former rock star Johnny Boz is stabbed to death by a blonde woman while having sex, who's very obviously played by Sharon Stone. And it's just kind of like, I don't know if this film is supposed to be ambiguous as to who the killer is. Like, if you're not supposed to be sure, is it Beth? Is it Sharon Stone? Like, is it supposed to be ambiguous? Is it supposed to be a twist at the end that Sharon Stone may not have been the killer, even though it was super obvious she was? Because it's very clearly her in this scene. If they were going to try to make it somewhat ambiguous, they should have either just not shown it very well or just had a completely different actress do the scene to keep it ambiguous. But there's really no tension with regards to who actually did it throughout the film. And that's also an issue I have with the ending, which we'll get to. So I don't know if it's just supposed to be like a horror movie thing where she succeeded in being a karma Houdini and getting away with all of her crimes by using her sexuality on Michael Douglas, or if it was supposed to be like an ambiguous mystery plot, but they fucked it up. I don't really know. It's not really. I guess it's no. It is pretty important. It's kind of undermines the movie. It either is good or bad, depending on, I guess, what the intent was. As it is, it's kind of left being a little ambiguous. So the only possible suspect is Boz is the rock star's bisexual girlfriend. And there's a lot of protests from the LGBTQ community over this one. Apparently they tried to disrupt the filming on the grounds that a LGBTQ person would never commit a crime. And any portrayal of them committing a crime is homophobia. So it's kind of funny. So Sharon Stone's character, Catherine Tremell, I think she has hundreds of millions of dollars. She's a very successful crime novelist. And I think she also, I forget if she has a PhD or something, but she's also, I think, in criminology or psychology or something like that. So they go through and they found out that she wrote a novel a little while back that was almost exactly the same as what happened in the crime. And the more they dig, the more they find there's all these incidents in her past where people die under mysterious circumstances that are basically the same as a crime novel she wrote. So they're not sure if she wrote the novel to provide an alibi and make it look like she's being framed, or if she actually didn't do it and someone was framing her. So that's kind of ambiguous. They bring her in for an investigation. We have the infamous scene where we get an upskirt shot with no panties on. Now, Sharon Stone claimed that she didn't know they were filming that part, which I don't believe for a second. Because it came out like 14 years after this movie was released. Like, she uncrosses her legs and we get to see like her lady bits, and it's supposed to be like her intimidating and showing her dominance and sexually exciting the room full of cops in order to control them. She also passes a lie detector test and is released. My understanding is that I think if you're a sociopath, lie detector tests don't work, but don't quote me on that because I could very easily be wrong. So once again, they find out that most of her past female lovers were also like murderers who killed people for apparently no reason. Now, Nick is in trouble, obviously, because he had shot those two tourists and he's on probation. And he has to frequently see Dr. Beth Garner, who's kind of the good girl. I mean, in a lot of these films, there's kind of the angel and demon aspect to it. I mean, this is film noir, so neither of them is a particularly upstanding person. But Beth is definitely like the good character and the positive influence on Michael Douglas, whereas Sharon Stone is the demonic, seductive influence. And Beth is an attractive woman who's supportive and is, I think she's kind of a bad person in that she lies to protect like Michael Douglas's character. Like, she'll say, "Oh no, he's definitely not on the sauce. He's not a psycho. He's not. There's nothing psychologically wrong with him." Despite the fact that he's very clearly losing his marbles as the film goes on. But yeah, he has to go to regular counseling sessions with her to make sure that he is stable. So Nick discovers that Sharon Stone's character is basing the protagonist of her latest book off of him, where his character is murdered after falling for the wrong woman. And once again, this is kind of ambiguous because it's like it really looks like she's setting up to kill him because she's writing a book about his death. All her other books came true. So it's kind of pointing you in that direction. He also finds out that Sharon Stone character had bribed the internal investigation affairs person for information about his life so that she could fuck with him more efficiently. He assaults the internal affairs guy, and then the internal affairs guy dies later and he becomes the prime suspect. And then we kind of go through the middle of the movie. And when we're going through the middle of the movie, there's just a bunch of stuff that happens. Michael Douglas and Sharon Stone have a really intense and unhealthy affair. Sharon Stone's female lover tries to kill him. Once again, we have this issue where it's very obvious that Sharon Stone's the killer and there's no tension whatsoever because she, like, when she's having sex with Nick, she like ties his hands up to the headboard. like she did at the beginning of the movie with the rock star she killed. Eventually, we find out that there was a girl in college that Sharon Stone's character met who was obsessed with her. And because Michael Douglas is thinking with his dick at this point, he's like, yeah, this whole thing could be some like 20-year long gay op by some girl who had a crush on her back in college to frame her, and somehow like all these novels are involved. Like, it doesn't make any sense. And once again, it's if this is supposed to be like an ambiguous or twist ending, it wasn't done very well. He also finds out that a college professor of Beth and Sharon Stone's was killed by an ice pick in an unresolved homicide, which inspired one of Catherine's earlier novels. So, this is all happening. Nick's on administrative leave. He comes across the final pages of Catherine's book, and he finds out that the fictional detective based on him finds his partner's body in an elevator. So they make an appointment to go meet with Catherine's college roommate at a hospital to try to figure out what actually happened. Michael Douglas has to wait out in the car, so his partner goes in by himself, and he's like, I just read this book the last few pages the other day that Sharon Stone had written about how the partner was killed in an elevator. So he goes in and he finds that his partner got stabbed to death with an ice pick. So at that time, Beth unexpectedly arrives. I explained she received a message to meet his partner. Nick has decided that Beth has murdered him, even though she killed him at close range with an ice pick, and she doesn't have any blood on her. But I guess she changed in the last like 30 seconds or something like that. Beth is reaching to play with her keys, but Nick thinks that she's reaching for a gun, so he shoots her. Then we go through, and there's a bunch of evidence at Beth's apartment that implicates her for the from the killing of all the involved people who Sharon Stone obviously killed, along with newspaper clippings and journal entries that make it look like she was obsessed with her. And once again, is this supposed to be a twist? Is it supposed to be, oh, this whole time it might have been that she was just some kind of weirdo, and the actual Machiavellian puppet master this whole time was Beth? But there's like no evidence of that. Everything, like, it's pretty in line with her being framed. Once again, maybe I'm just misunderstanding this movie. I think it's pretty clear that it's supposed to be kind of like a I have no mouth and I must scream thing, where Catherine just gets completely fucked and Michael Douglas is just thinking with his dick, so he's like unable to see something extremely obvious. And like I said, it's kind of a Karma Houdini situation. So they go back to his apartment. They discuss maybe they're going to have a future together, maybe have kids, maybe not have kids. Um, and then it pans down and it shows that there's an ice pick under the bed. So I don't know if that means she's going to kill Michael Douglas now or she's going to kill him in the future or what. Once again, if they wanted to make this ambiguous, they should have panned down and there'd been nothing there or just left it off. So if we're going once again for more of a horror movie and she's like a demonic force of nature, that makes sense. I think I've seen people try to like twist it in reviews as saying it's ambiguous, but it really isn't at all. I guess the other issue is just because a sequel to this came out, which I haven't seen, in which Sharon Stone's in it, but Michael Douglas isn't in it. It's pretty obvious what happened after this movie. So overall, I'd say Basic Instinct is a pretty good movie. Um, if it's just supposed to be a horror movie, it's very well done. If it's supposed to be a legitimate mystery film, then it fails pretty miserably. But it is a good film. I'd probably recommend watching it if you don't mind the like really explicit sex and violence in it. Um, Otherwise, I don't have a ton else to say about it. Good movie, interesting characters, kind of genre breaking in some ways. God bless, and that's all I have to add.